But, tonight I get to introduce a real American hero. And, we say this a lot, and it's one thing to say it about people. There's so many American heroes. If you're a great athlete, you're an American hero. If you're a scientist, you're a great American hero. You're a doctor, soldier, and it's true about these people. But when I say it about Steve Bannon, I emphasize the word American. And it's because he's a hero for primarily American reasons. Steve is an American hero because he empowers the disenfranchised. He empowers the powerless. He gives a voice to the voiceless. Just yesterday, I was in Dallas filming commercials with a group of detransitioners and a doctor who was a whistleblower. Detransitioners, if you don't know or aren't familiar with the term, these are people, mostly kids, that were taken advantage of by the transgender industry. They were fooled and pushed into gruesome and horrific sex change procedures. They were mutilated. Their bodies were disfigured. They're sterilized, some of them. And these are the people that came to eventually regret it. These were kids, and they were sterilized. Some of them even in their teens. Their bodies were disfigured, and doctors and big pharmaceutical companies made money all along the way. But when they came to regret their sex change procedures, no one was to be found. None of these doctors, none of these pharmaceutical companies were there to help them. But what I found is there was something very crazy yesterday to me, which is that these kids were all radiating with joy. And they were radiating with joy after having been mutilated and sterilized and being robbed of the ability to have their own family someday. But that's what happens when you do the Lord's work. That's what happens when you fight for justice, is you radiate with joy. And you radiate with joy when you're doing brave things outside your comfort zone, like filming campaign commercials. It's not just American, it's Christian. Almost every American institution, from the media to the medical industry, has silenced these kids and disenfranchised them. They'll put Dylan Mulvaney on a Bud Light can, though. But they'll silence the rest of the hundreds and thousands of people that have come forward to expose the lies of the trans industry. And a few years ago, even conservatives, and still too many Republicans, are ignoring these laws and these rules today and what's happening to our children and our families. But you know who gave APP and the pro-family movement a voice? Who gave us a platform? Who gave all of the so-called deplorables a platform and a voice? Stephen K. Bannon. The city's mostly pay to play. Steve's had me on his show dozens of times. He's helped me raise millions of dollars in resources to fight for these kids, to fight for these families, to help save this country. He's never once asked me for anything in return besides to come on a show, tell the truth, and tell it boldly. And that's why we love him. And that's why he is an American hero. So ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the honey badger, Stephen K. Bannon.
When you talk about the American moment, it's not great. You know, I don't have a lot to add from what Brother Han said, which was pretty stark, pretty realistic. But I want you to contemplate what's happening right now in this city, the greatest and most powerful nation in the history of the earth. What, about a mile up the road on Capitol Hill? It's a farce. It's a disgusting farce. And tomorrow, what's going to happen? Passing of a minibus or a maxi bus, whatever they call it, controlled by Republicans, controlled by people that you fought for and worked for. This is a nation right now that on the watch of this usurper in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue have planned, executed, and exacerbated a magnificent invasion of the country that they've done. And Mark Krikorian and his team, Todd Bensman in the crowd, day in and day out show you 10 million illegal alien invaders at a minimum just on their watch that have done what? According to Chairman Powell, they needed immigration to bring down wages because the underclass and the working class in this country, minority working class, they're making too much money. That's the problem, making too much money. So the radicals you talked about in these agencies and in this government, this illegitimate regime has allowed actually the worst event in the history of this country. Think of what our forefathers would think. Think of all your family, your grandfathers, your grandmothers, what they had to do to get here and what they had to do once they were here to make sure you're sitting here today. What would they say to us? What would they say to us about that? On top of it, the Republicans, we've just sat there and approved another budget of $7 trillion spending with a $2 to $2.5 trillion deficit. And it's going in perpetuity right now. Bank of America agrees with us. We talked about it months ago. It's $1 trillion every 100 days. And the only way you can keep it going is the scam of the Federal Reserve and the Treasury working together, hand in glove. On top of that, we got a geopolitical crisis on the rim of the Eurasian landmass. And I don't need to go into the detail that David Sachs went last night when he walked you through the Ukraine situation. But we also have the Red Sea, the Middle East, our ally Israel, and of course, the greatest threat, the existential threat, the CCP, which is in everywhere, and including now looking at the chimp plants in Taiwan, across the South China Sea and the Straits of Taiwan. Those converging crises is exactly why you're here. This is why the quality of people of David Sachs and Blake Masters and the other donors are here, because you have to be our savages. We're not going to change this thing by playing the game like we've played it. And the country is in a crisis, and now these crises are converging, and that's not even the cultural crisis. Look what Terry just talked about. What happens to your grandparents, your great-grandparents came back, and you had a conversation about what's happening there? They look at you like, what are you talking about? Look at what Han talked about in the neo-Marxism in every institution and organization. And so we can't talk about it anymore. People know what the problem is. It's like in the movie The Untouchables. Remember, I don't know if you remember the scene, maybe the boomers do, with Kevin Costner and Sean Connery. Thank you. They're sitting there and they're saying about the old cop and the new guy, and they're talking about, prohibition and the whiskey. And they go, everybody knows where the whiskey is. Do you have the political will to walk across the street and kick down the door and stop it? We ought to be humiliated by what's going on. It's just going to be spin and talk and the cant that comes out of the mainstream media. And the Republican Party is nothing but controlled opposition. Johnson's proven that. I mean, McCarthy was worse. They did that debt deal. We're still living with this. But look at what's happening. This is not sustainable. It's not sustainable geopolitically. It's not sustainable culturally. It's certainly not sustainable financially. Society below us, the working class and the underclass, are starting to break apart. And when that breaks, we're going to have issues in this country that we never felt we were going to have, don't know how to deal with. The political class in this city cannot deal with the problems we face. This is why they hate Trump. Trump's not perfect. He's far from perfect. That he's an instrument of divine providence is no doubt in my mind, because I was there. I saw it. No money, no organization. A plane, a man, a message, and just go around, and people listened because he connects to them. And he shows you the multi-ethnic, multiracial coalition we can put together, particularly if we focus on the economics of it. if we focus on economic nationalism, and we start to treat American citizens like they got a special deal. It's not just America first, it's American citizens first. But this is what American Moment is, and this is why I've been a huge supporter of this from day one, and this is why I come over and give the talks. Because there are not many people like the leadership of this organization. But more importantly, there's not many people like the young people that we're putting in on Capitol Hill into the committees, into the second Trump term. You can't just talk about deconstructing the administrative state. You have to do it. You have to take on the deep state. You have to do it. You have to be prepared to go to prison. I get prison sentences all over. Today, and I don't know if you saw it, today in Italy, after 5 years, and it cost me a couple of $1 million, we were acquitted of all criminal charges and civil charges. You know, and by the way, the guy that was there, the guy, he's a guy like Navarro. You know, Trump and I are built a little different than others, you know, Rudy, et cetera. You're going to throw you in jail, right? Bring it. Ben Harnwell and Peter Navarro, they're different. They're PhDs. This guy had every opportunity. I asked him, I said, if you want to throw in the towel, I don't want to do it, but we'll do it. He was facing long-term prison sentence in Italy. And you know what the crime was? You know what the crime was? That we had the audacity to take a monastery they put on auction, win the auction, that we could do anything and return it not to a hotel, not to a boutique, not to some spa. We were turning it to an academy of the Judeo-Christian West, built upon Jerusalem and Athens and Rome, and what that meant for the West. And build a gladiator school, not just a think tank, but something that would be like American Moment. You're doing it in a very narrow sector, but very important. People that are ready, trained up, have the intellectual and educational background to actually go into Capitol Hill today and make an impact. We were trying to do it a little more broadly, to take people, train them up in part one about what's the theory of the case. In part two, actually train them to be information age gladiators or legionnaires. And three, also have a physical aspect to it so you know you could play this game at a high level for a long time. That was a crime to the deep state of Italy. The intelligence services came after us. The law enforcement came after us. Because they said, oh, this guy's just going to train populist nationalist people that can go in and have other Brexits or win the European parliamentary elections this June. You're damn right we were, and we are. They're playing for keeps. Our fines for, I forget whatever, is going to be tens of millions of dollars, and people are going to jail. Just like President Trump. Think about it for a second. 700 years in prison, take his business. See that trials like the Moscow show trials. I'm not kidding. When I say Trump is only the third in this country, you have General Washington, you have Abraham Lincoln, you have Donald Trump. Why? Only 3 times in this country's history, this republic's history, has the fate and destiny of an individual be inextricably linked to the fate and destiny of the republic. And Trump's, he's no constitutional scholar. He's not a particularly churchy guy. But I will tell you, he is an instrument of divine will. And it's upon you. You're the hoplites, right? You're the foot soldiers. This can't get changed just by a leader. We saw that in the first term. This is why Heritage and others, Russ Vogt's group, Sarab's working on it, training up people for what we call the, Project 2025, or whatever you call it, on the day that we hit the beach. Of the 4,000 people that will actually do the work inside the government, 3,000 can be a landing team and go in day one. Only Donald Trump has to approve them. 1,000 have to be Senate confirmed. And guess what? They may never be Senate confirmed or dragged out like Mitch McConnell dragged it out last time if Schumer's there. But we have 3,000 go right away. That is what you can be part of. That is how you deconstruct the administrative state. That's how you take down the deep state. And let me tell you something, just like in 16, of which I think I spent $2.5 or $3 million out of my pocket for the Russia, I spent more time, 60 hours, in front of Mueller, in front of the shifty shift in the House Intel, in front of Senate Intel, and they're grilling you for 60 hours. You know what they're trying to do? You know what they're trying to do? One slip up for a perjury trap, constantly. all the time. Bang, 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 bang. And they want to put you in jail. If you think that they're just going to sit there and pat us on the head and say, oh, this is terrific. Trump came back and he won and this is great. Why don't we just let MAGA, right? Why don't we just let MAGA? Why don't we let American Moment? Let those guys in here. Let them do what they want. This is not going to happen that way. It's not going to happen. Every successful revolution, every successful movement on earth has two things it has to have: spirit and willpower. Spirit and willpower. When Terry Schilling talks about those donations, the money they raised, that comes from people making $35,000, $40,000 a year. The War Room's audience is a working class, lower middle class audience. Yeah, we have hedge fund people and producers and everybody trying to find out what are they thinking? What are these MAGA people thinking? It's the little guy. But they understand now, because in this city, as you know, if you're not in the room, you're not in the deal. And Trump put them in the room and he put them at the head of the table. That's why they hate Trump. That's why they consider Trump a traitor to his class. But that we have tapped in, and you collectively, in this Trump movement, the MAGA movement, the greatest political power on the face of the earth right now. They are there. They're focused and they want to win, but they want changes. No more happy talk, right? They know what has to happen in the country. Think about what's going on right here right now, tonight. They're going to call for immediate ceasefire in Gaza. They're going to dictate. They're hurting the Israelis every day. When they put in Parliament Square last week, when the Palestinians took over, the Sharia supremacists took over. And put up on Big Ben to the river to the sea. That's not Israel, that's us. We are the Judeo-Christian West. We're one civilization. From time immemorial, for 5,000 years. Thomas Aquinas, to start it off, the monastery we had was 1,000 years old. At the beginning of the week is the 159th anniversary of Lincoln's second inaugural address. Read that, the greatest political speech in history. How it resonates with Old Testament themes. And we have a administration or regime made of mainly of progressives that are prepared to throw Israel under the bus. The pro-Palestinian movement in the United States of America is the most anti-American movement in the history of this country. And you think it's going to get better? It's not going to get better. And people want to look away. You know what? People want to look away just like they want to look away in England. They're afraid. They're physically afraid. They're afraid if they talk up, they'll be debanked. They're afraid they'll be deplatformed. They're afraid the jackboots and the Gestapo FBI will come beating down the door. Look how many people around Trump have prison sentences or jail. Look at Rudy. He's bankrupt. Look at this. Look at Trump. They're playing hardball. They're not prepared, and they will not give up control of the most powerful nation on earth unless we take it from them after we win an election. You young people, this is why you got the David Saxes and the Blake Masters, the quality people you have here, others that has contributed, all these great donors that have every option in the world to give money. Why Terry Schilling, a guy like that's committed what he's done at American Principles. Why this organization, you have the quality of speakers you have to come over. Because you're curated. But the most important thing you have to have now, you have to have courage. Don't think some Trump victory is going to get us there. Some Trump victory is going to be the entry card into the real work. And the real work is taking this thing apart brick by brick. The national security state, the intelligence apparatus that's out of control, the biopharmaceutical industry that's out of control, complex that's out of control, this administrative state that is metastasizing every day. And remember, since we won in 2022, the budget they're working on, don't take any of the lies or any of the misrepresentation. It's Nancy Pelosi's budget plus $30 billion. And everything you talked about right there, every opportunity we had to take out the woke and weaponize, nothing came out. You had a few things on the margin, and that's it. And we had over a year to work on this. Why? They're afraid. They're afraid of being called racist. They're afraid of being called xenophobes. They're afraid of not being allowed in the clubs. They're afraid. It's you, as we get you into these positions, that have to be fearless and have to be risk takers, or it's over. If we just play by the rules, if we just go along this, if we're the controlled opposition that the Murdochs want us to be, remember, Fox has tapped this thing along for years. That's where the country couldn't have gotten the shape they were in unless the media arm was in on the fix, right? This is why they hate Trump. Think about it for a second. Trump goes to Mar-a-Lago. The memo from Murdoch says that the court, we found in the court file, we're going to make him a non-person. This guy who just won the Republican nomination 2 nights ago, I think the earliest it's ever been really awarded, right, on Super Tuesday, did not do a live interview on Fox, I think, for 3 years. They wouldn't let him on because they're afraid of what he's going to say for 3 years. It's controlled opposition. And that's not going to get better. So my message to you is that the reason I think we're supporters is you're not the future. The future's now. When President Trump wins, we need shock troops to go in and to hit this. And on Capitol Hill, you're going to have to go in these committees, you're going to have to go into these staffs, and you're going to have to be the ones that are constantly pressing. You're going to have to be the one late at night to say, look, no offense, nothing's come out of this. We're playing the game. There are no cuts have been made. On the afternoon of the 20th of January, 2023, you're going to have to do 2 things. One, you're going to start to have massive cuts to federal spending. You're going to have to do, before you get to entitlements, people that have worked all their lives and make $1,200 in Social Security and a little bit of Medicare are not going to sit there and just say, okay, go ahead, Chris Christie, go ahead, Nikki, give me some ideas and let's make some change. That's not going to happen. If you show them that you can make cuts in discretionary spending and meaningful cuts to get on some glide slope to a balanced budget like in 5 years, and all those cuts are going to be tough, including in defense, and at the same time, show that you're serious about taxing the wealthy, serious about it. Now, he's over there tonight, oh, it's 25%. A year ago, he said the same thing. He's crushed the economics. He's crushed the underclass. He's crushed the working class. That's why they hate him. That's why the numbers are so terrible. Don't take it from me. Look at his approval economy. From those people, they hate him. He's made the wealthier than they've ever been. He's going to talk tonight, oh, we're going to tax the rich, we're going to it's all a con. The Democratic Party is essentially a bunch of billionaires, the credentializers, as you talked about, Terry, the credentializing class, the college students are all idiots and can't pay their loans back, and then an underclass. That's it. The middle class, the working class, essentially with us. Not all, because there are some social issues that we're separated on, but essentially in the economics, we're similar. This is why I said when they put me on the campaign, and Hillary Clinton came out and she goes, he's a racist, he's a xenophobe. And I told everybody, I said, calm down, take a deep breath. If she's going to go down this route and we stick to economic nationalism and bringing the jobs back and focus on working people, we've got this. And most importantly, we have it in Michigan, we have it in Wisconsin, and we have it in Pennsylvania. These people are with you, but they're going to want to see results. American Moment is about this moment we're in. We are on the precipice and the abyss of losing a civilization that's been around for 6,000 years? I want you to think about that. We could lose it all. If you see what's happening in France, you see what's happening in England, they can't even bring this topic up. They can't even talk about it. In France, the generals are saying they're heading to a civil war. It's not Russia's not the enemy. The Russian people, last time I looked, were our principal ally in World War II and lost 65 million people beating the Nazis and the fascists. It was the Bolsheviks and the Soviets, and then we turned it over to the KGB, just like we let Deng Xiaoping off the hook in Tiananmen Square. We sold these people out, Lao Beijing and the Russians, right after the war. And 49 for the Chinese, 45 for the Russians. We overarmed Stalin the last 2 years of the war. Even Churchill was complaining about it. And then 50 years later, Tiananmen Square and the Berlin Wall are 6 months apart. The Bush apparatus went and bailed out Deng. We had him on the ropes, got us a liberty right there, got us a democracy in Tiananmen Square. Gone. We turned it over to the CCP, just like the West went in and tried to steal as much as they could possibly steal from the Russian people even they allowed the KGB to come back. That's your elites in this country. And right now they've done it to the American people, and the American people are looking to you to make changes. So tonight, the only thing I ask for later, to think about that. There's 8 billion people in the world today? I think some statistics is 115, 120 billion people in the history of the earth. Homo sapiens before we get to Homo sapien plus, which is a whole nother issue we have to talk about later, right? Think about it for a second. Why has divine providence put you here? Why you're in this room? Why are you in an organization like this? Why do you have comrades like this? Why are you in an organization that has Blake Masters and David Sachs and these great donors, and has Terry Schilling and Raheem Kassam and all these Vish Burrow and Cameron Wallace, all these young up-and-comers? They come here and they say, we want to back these people. Ask yourself why. Why, of all of that, did divine providence put you here in the American moment? Why? And then you answer the question, what is your responsibility? What is your accountability going to be? Because if you don't do it, he's right. There's no Calvary. There's nobody coming to back us up. This is it. So look around. And we only got Trump for one term. It's going to take 30 or 40 years to turn this thing around, and every day is going to be Stalingrad. The reason I love this organization and the leadership, they're tough, and I know you're tough. We got a long fight ahead, but I like the cut of your jib. So good luck and good hunting.
No. We have to keep it going for the honey badger. Let's go. You know, I feel a little bit jealous because when Terry told his story about Steve's unceasing generosity, he never asked for anything. He just says, come on the show and talk about it. That's my story too. It's funny. I now have a rule where if I'm on the road and I know that the day is going to be busy and I can't really get in front of a camera or my laptop, I don't text Steve between the hours of 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. because if I do, he'll tell me to come on the show today. And it's always like, well, what am I going to talk about, Steve? It's like, yeah, there's some topic, but he just says, come on and talk about American Moment. And it's the War Room audience. Yes, it's absolutely massive. Yes, it has this working class component. But man, there's a lot of very, very successful people that listen to that show as well. I think it is the cutting edge of what a mainstream news show today looks like. The War Room posse is extraordinarily powerful. We recruited students that have come through our programming, people that are staffing the Hill, donors have come to us through that, and a ton of attention has come from being on the War Room. So thank you, Steve, for all of your support. It really means a lot.